Hello, today I'm reading an article from Harvard Business Review, and the title is Why Strategy Execution Unravels and What to Do About It by Donald Su, Rebecca Honkes, and Charlie Su. Donald Su is a senior lecturer at the MIT Sloan School of Management and the author with Kathleen M. Eisenhardt of Simple Rules: How to Thrive in a Complex World. Rebecca Honkes, a fellow at London Business School Centre for Management Development and fellow at London School of Economics Centre of Economic Performance. Charlie Su is a co-founder of and a partner at Charles Stump's Strategy Partners. Since Michael Porter's seminal work in the 1980s, we have had a clear and widely accepted definition of what strategy is. But we know a lot less about translating a strategy into results. Books and articles on strategy outnumber those on execution by an order of magnitude, and what little has been written on execution tends to focus on tactics or generalize from a single case. So, what do we know about strategy execution? We know that it matters. A recent survey of more than 400 global CEOs found that executional excellence was the number one challenge facing corporate leaders in Asia, Europe, and the United States, heading a list of some 80 issues including innovation, geopolitical instability, and top-line growth. We also know that execution is difficult. Studies have found that 2/3 to 3/4 of large organizations struggle to implement their strategies. Well, this article is from 2015 for your reference. 90 years ago, one of us, Don, began a large-scale project to understand how complex organizations can execute their strategies more effectively. The research includes more than 40 experiments in which we made changes in companies and measured the impact on execution, along with a survey administered to near 8,000 managers in more than 250 companies. The study is ongoing, but has already produced valuable insights. The most important one is this: several widely held beliefs about how to implement strategy are just plain wrong. In this article, we debunk 5 of the most pernicious myths and replace them with a more accurate perspective that will help managers effectively execute strategy. Myth 1: execution equals alignment. Over the past few years, we have asked managers from hundreds of companies before they take our survey to describe how strategy is executed in their firms. Their accounts paint a remarkably consistent picture. The steps typically consist on translating strategy into objectives, cascading those objectives down the hierarchy, measuring progress, and rewarding performance. When asked how they would improve execution, the executives cited tools such as management by objectives and the balanced scorecard that are designed to increase alignment between activities and strategy up and down the chain of command. In the manager's mind, execution equals alignment. So a failure to execute implies a breakdown in the processes to link strategy to action at every level in the organization. Despite such perceptions, it turns out that in the vast majority of companies we have studied, those processes are sound. Research on strategy alignment began in the 1950s with Peter Drucker's work on management by objectives. And by now, we know a lot about achieving alignment. Our research shows the best practices as well established in today's companies. More than 80% of managers say that their goals are limited in number, specific and measurable, and that they have the funds needed to achieve them. Translating that, they are smart. If most companies are doing everything right in terms of alignment, why are they struggling to execute their strategies? To find out, we ask survey respondents how frequently they can count on others to deliver on promises, a reliable measure of whether things in an organization get done. C. Promise-based management, the essence of execution by Donald N. Sewell and Charles Espinosa. Harvard Business Review, April 2007. Fully 84% of managers says that they can rely on their boss and their direct report at all or most of the time. A finding that would make Drucker proud, but sheds little light on why execution fails. When we ask about commitments across functions and business units, the answer becomes clear. Only 90% of managers say they can rely on colleagues in other functions and units all the time, and just half say they can rely on them most of the time. Commitments from these colleagues are typically not much more reliable than promises made by external partners, such as distributors and suppliers. When managers cannot rely on colleagues in other functions and units, they compensate with a host of dysfunctional behaviors that undermine execution. They duplicate effort, let promises to customers slip, delay their deliverables, or pass up attractive opportunities. The failure to coordinate also leads to conflict between functions and units, and these are handled badly 2 times or 3, resolved after a significant delay. 38% of the time, resolved quickly but poorly. 14%, or simply let to fester. 12%. Even though, as we've seen, managers typically equate execution with alignment, they do recognize the importance of coordination when questioned about it directly. When asked to identify the single greatest challenge to executing their company's strategy, 30% cite failure to coordinate across units, making that a close second to failure to align. 40% managers also say that they are 3 times more likely to miss performance commitments because of insufficient support from other units than because of their own team's failure to deliver. Whereas companies have effective processes for cascading goals downwards in the organization, their systems for managing horizontal performance commitments lack teeth. More than 8% of the companies we have studies have at least one formal system for managing commitments across silos, including cross-function committees, service level agreements, and centralized project management offices, PMOs. But only 20% of managers believe that these systems work well all or most of the time. More than half want more structure in the processes to coordinate activities across units. Twice the number who wants more structure in the management by objective system. Idea in brief, the problem. We have thousands of guides about developing a strategy, but very few about how to actually execute one. And the difficulty of achieving executional excellence is a major obstacle at most companies. The research. Executives attribute poor execution to a lack of alignment and a weak performance culture. It turns out, though, that in most of business activities line up well with strategic goals, and the people who meet their numbers are consistently rewarded. The recommendations to execute their strategies, companies must foster coordination across units and build the agility to adapt to changing market conditions. Myth 2. Execution means sticking to the plan. When crafting strategy, many executives create detailed roadmaps that specify who should do what, by when, and with what resources. The strategic planning process has received more than its share of criticism, but along with the budgeting processes, it remains the backbone of execution in many organizations. Bain and Company, which regularly surveys large corporates around the world about their use of management tools, finds that strategy planning consistently heads the list. After investing enormous amount of time and energy formulating a plan and its associated budget, executives view deviations as a lack of discipline that undercuts execution. Unfortunately, no Gantt chart survives contact with reality. No plan can anticipate every event that might help or hinder a company trying to achieve its strategic objectives. Managers and employees at every level need to adapt to facts on the ground, surmount unexpected obstacles, and take advantage of fleeting opportunities. Strategy execution, as we defined the term, consists of seizing opportunities that support the strategy while coordinating with other parts of the organization on an ongoing basis. When managers come up with creative solutions to unforeseen problems or run with unexpected opportunities, they are not undermining systematic implementation. They are demonstrating executing at its best. Such real-time adjustments require firms to be agile. Yet, a lack of agility is a major obstacle to effective execution among the companies we have studied. When asked to name the greatest challenge their companies will face in executing strategy over the next few years, nearly one-third of managers cite difficulties adapting to changing market circumstances. It's not that companies fail to adapt at all. Only one manager in 10 saw that as the problem, but most organizations either react so slowly that they can't seize fleeting opportunities or mitigate emerging threats, 29% around that, or react quickly but lose sight of company strategy, 24%. Just as managers want more structure in the processes to support coordination, they crave more structure in the processes used to adapt to changing circumstances. A similarly easy solution would be to do a better job of resource allocation. Although resource allocation is unquestionably critical to execution, the term itself is misleading. In volatile markets, the allotment of funds, people, and managerial attention is not a one-time decision. It requires ongoing adjustments. According to a study by McKinsey, firms that actively reallocated capital expenditures across business units achieved an average shareholder return 30% higher than the average return of companies that were slow to shift funds. Instead of focusing on effort and resource allocation, which is connotation of one-off choices, managers should concentrate on the fluid reallocation of funds, people, and attention. We have noticed a pattern among the companies in our example. Resources are often trapped in unproductive uses. Fewer than one-third of managers believe that their organizations reallocate funds to the right places quickly enough to be effective. The reallocation of people is even worse. Only 20% of managers say their organization do a good job on shifting people across units to support strategic priorities. The rest report that their companies rarely shift people across units, 40%, 47%, or else make shifts in ways that disrupt other units, 33%. Companies also struggle to disinvest. 8 in 10 managers say their companies fail to exit declining businesses or to kill unsuccessful initiatives quickly enough. Failure to exit undermines execution in obvious ways by wasting resources that could be redeployed. Slow exits impede execution in more insidious ways as well. Top executives devote a disproportionate amount of time and attention to business with limited upside and send intelligent managers who often burn themselves on trying to save business that should have been shut down or sold years earlier. The longer top executives drag their feet, the more likely they are to lose the confidence of their middle managers, whose ongoing support is critical for execution. A word of warning: managers should not invoke agility as an excuse to chase every opportunity that crosses their path. Many companies in our sample lack strategic discipline when deciding which new opportunity to pursue. Half of the middle managers we have surveyed believe that they could secure significant resources to pursue attractive opportunities that fall outside their strategic objectives. This may sound like good news for any individual manager, but it spells trouble for a company as a whole, leading to a pursuit of more initiatives than resources can support. Only 11% of the managers we have surveyed believe that all their company's strategic priorities have the financial and human resources needed for success. That's a shocking statistic. It means that 9 managers in 10 expect some of their organization's major initiatives to fail for lack of resources. Unless managers screen opportunities against company strategy, they will waste time and effort on peripheral initiatives and deprive the most promising ones of the resources they need to win big. Agility is critical to execution, but it must fit within strategic boundaries. In other words, agility must be balanced with alignment. Myth 3. Communication equals understanding. It's pretty dire when half of the C-suite cannot connect the dots between strategic priorities. Many executives believe that relentlessly communication strategy is a key to success. The CEO of one London-based professional services firm met with her management team the first week of every month and began each meeting by reciting the firm's strategy and its key priorities for the year. She was delighted when an employee engagement survey, not ours, revealed that 84% of all staff members agreed with the statement, "I am clear on our organization's top priorities." Her efforts seemed to be paying off. Then her management team took our survey, which asks members to describe the firm's strategy in their own words and to list the top 5 strategic priorities. Fewer than one-third could name even 2. The CEO was dismayed. After all, she discussed those objectives in every management meeting. Unfortunately, she is not alone. Only 55% of the middle managers we have surveyed can name even one of their company's top 5 priorities. In other words, when the leader is charged with explaining strategy to the troops, are given 5 chances to list their company's strategies, objectives. Nearly half fail to get even one right. Not only are strategic objectives poorly understood, but they often seem unrelated to one another and disconnected from the overall strategy. Just over half of all top team members say they have a clear sense of how major priorities and initiatives fit together. It's pretty dire when half of the C-suite cannot connect the dots between strategic priorities, but matters are even worse elsewhere. Fewer than 1/3 of senior executives' direct reports clearly understand the connection between corporate priorities and the share plummets to 16% from frontline supervisors and team leaders. Senior executives are often shocked to see how poorly their company's strategy is understood throughout the organization. In their view, they invest huge amount of time communicating strategy in an unending string of emails, management meetings, and town hall discussions. But the amount of communication is not the issue. Nearly 90% of middle managers believe that top leaders communicate the strategy frequently enough. How can so much communication yield so little understanding? Part of the problem is that executives measure communication in terms of inputs, the number of emails sent and town halls hosted, rather than by the only metric that actually counts: how well key leaders understand what's communicated. A related problem occurs when executives dilute their core problem messages with peripheral considerations. The executives at one tech company, for example, went to great pains to present their company's strategy and objectives at the annual executive offsite. But they also introduced 11 corporate priorities, which were different from the strategic objectives. A list of core competencies, including one with 9 templates, a set of corporate values, and a dictionary of 21 new strategic terms to be mastered. Not surprisingly, the assembled managers were baffled about what mattered most. When asked about obstacles to understanding the strategy, middle managers are 4 times more likely to cite a large number of corporate priorities and strategic initiatives than to mention the lack of clarity in communication. Top executives add the confusion when they change their message frequently, a problem flagged by nearly 1/4 of middle managers. A performance culture drives execution. This is the myth 4. When their companies fail to translate strategy into results, many executives point to a weak performance culture as the root cause. The data tells a different story. It's true that at most companies of the office culture, the core values posted on the company website say, does not support execution. However, a company's true values reveal themselves when managers make hard choices. And here we have found that a focus on performance does shape behavior on a day-to-day business. The most depressing problems with many corporate cultures, however, is that they fail to foster the coordination that, as we've discussed, is essential to execution. And companies consistently get this wrong. When it comes to hires, promotions, and non-financial recognition, past performance is 2 or 3 times more likely than a track record of collaboration to be rewarded. We ask respondents what would happen to a manager in their organization who achieved his objectives but failed to collaborate with a colleague in other units. only 20% believe that the behavior would be addressed promptly. 60% believe it would be addressed inconsistently or after a delay, and 20% believe it would be tolerated. Execution, what should be driven from the top? This is the myth 5. In his best-selling book, Execution, Larry Bossidy describes how, as the CEO of Signal, he personally negotiated performance objectives with managers several levels below him and monitored their progress. Accounts like this reinforce the common image of an heroic CEO perched atop the organization chart, driving execution. That approach can work for a while. Signal's stock outperformed the market under Bossidy leadership. However, Bossidy writes shortly after he retired, the discipline of execution unraveled, and the company gave us with a collective SP 500. Many executives try to solve the problem of execution by reducing it to a single dimension. They focus on tightening alignment up and down the chain of command by improving existing processes such as strategic planning and performance management, or adopting new tools such as the Bassett scorecard. They are useful measures, to be sure, but relying on them as the sole means of driving execution ignores the need for coordination and agility in volatile markets. If managers focus too narrowly on improving alignment, they risk developing ever more refined answers to the wrong questions. In the worst case, companies slip into a dynamic we call the alignment trap. When execution stalls, managers respond by tightening the screws on alignment, tracking more performance metrics, for example, or demanding more frequent meetings to monitor progress and recommend what to do. This kind of top-down scrutiny often deteriorates into micromanagement, which stifles the experimentation required for agility and the peer-to-peer interactions that drive coordination. Seeing execution suffer but not knowing why, managers turn once more to the tool they know best and further tighten alignment. The end result? Companies are trapped into a downward spiral in which more alignment leads to worse results. If common beliefs about execution are incomplete at best and dangerous at worst, what should take their place? The starting point is a fundamental redefinition of execution as the ability to seize opportunities aligned with strategy while coordinating with other parts of the organization on an ongoing basis. Reframing execution in those terms can help managers pinpoint why it is stalling. Armed with a more comprehensive understanding, they can avoid pitfalls such as the alignment trap and focus on the factors that matter most for translating strategy into results. Well, this is the end of the article, and the summary is: if managers focus too narrowly on improving alignment, they risk developing ever more refined answers to the wrong questions. Thank you. See you. So this article was reprint number R1503C, dated March 2015.